Mary, you've been doing this a really long time with different groups, and PTSO, I think the strength of PTSO is the day-to-day, hi, we're here, we appreciate what you do. The sandwiches and cookies go a really, really long way when you're trying to be a teacher that is dealing with everything they have to deal with. So thank you for being on-site support for the staff that appreciate you so much. Thank you. We were required to put this on the agenda by, my understanding is the state, if not the state, at least LACO. And as long as it was on the agenda, I remember people were coming in and following the track of some other agencies that would be like, okay, well, I see mandated vaccinations coming on and things like that, and that was never the intent of this board. In fact, I made a couple comments that said, if it never hits the light of day on the agenda, the superintendent can announce things, but if the stuff doesn't get moved in or a second, it dies on the vine. It has always bothered me that it's been on here. Is it something that has fallen off the LACO radar? I know at work we've pulled up all the signs, we've put off all the stickers. The HR department has advised everyone that there are no more COVID leaves and associated things like that. So has that been the directive from LACO? So it's your recommendation that we don't need this anymore? Correct. Perfect, thank you. Okay, ditto on what Tim said about the Acton Women's Club. I get confused sometimes about Acton. I get confused sometimes of whether I'm in Acton or Agua, Dulce, but they both do wonderful things. I went to the celebration, and the dollar amounts are getting to the point where it's half of what it would take you to go to UCLA for a year, and I was just very impressed with that. I learned a new word today called colloquium, I guess. I visited this event, which was basically, I learned, you have to remember, I don't float the sites in the capacity of a board member. You will not see me running around the school sites imparting what I think is a board member, whatever. I don't run people there. I don't tell people what to do there. I go when I'm invited. You'll have a member of the executive team with me, or I'm in talking or seeing about one of my children. That's my role. I don't impart what I do on the school sites. Always remember that. But I was invited to this today, oh, by the way, there's a play we need to be invited to next Thursday and Friday at 9 a.m. So I learned about this, but we were invited to sit at a table in which you have a model here. We talk about building what the district is and what its culture is and what its flavor is. And this program has teachers who are veteran teachers here, bringing on people who are working on their credential or young in their teaching career. And there's a mentoring program, and it seems to be very highly structured and measurable. I got to share the table with Mr. Zwern, Ms. O'Brien, Ms. Scheidig, and Kim Shaw. And they were talking about the program, what they did. And I had a question for them as a board member and as a parent, and going back into my childhood. I asked each one of the teachers or younger teachers being mentored earlier in their career and said, can you tell me about a time where you know that outside of reading and writing and math and all that you teach people, did you touch somebody? Tell me about the kid that you think you changed their life by being the person you are. And I heard some wonderful stories, and in my world, there are some kids that are just blessed. We have a few of them in the audience, but there are some kids that are not blessed and struggle. And those kids need a hero. And the purpose of education is to prepare kids for more education and an independent adult life where you're successful and you fit into society. And you can teach people math and reading and the rest of it all day long. But unless you give them the confidence and identity that they're a unique individual that's valuable, you end up with people that are broken as adults. And then you get chronic underemployment, substance abuse, all kinds of things. So the heroes are the teachers, and they all do it. And you have to challenge them to find the times they did. I should put Ms. Owens on the spot because I know one kid that you've influenced highly, and there's, I'm sure, thousands. But the important part of this to me was the teachers that were able to say, yeah, there was that one kid, and I think by the end of the year, and it's interesting to track those kids, if you could, to find out what impact that moment had. That made me very happy. That's why I sit up here. I went to the Antelope Valley School Boards Association meeting the other night, and the program was canceled. The speaker couldn't make it, so they brought in somebody from Capital Partners, who is a finance firm whose job it is to track budgets and tax rates and all that kind of thing for the state of California. And at the end, they were kind of painting out a picture that doesn't look like we're going to keep getting more and more money. It's going to tighten up a little bit, depending on whether they take the COLA this year and make it 8 point something, or cut it back to 4, because that's cumulative. So I think the word was cumulative. If you get a 10% raise this year instead of a 4% raise this year, next year's comparable starts getting less. And so I heard about that, but there's something that I follow in this district very closely. And those are liabilities to the budget that could affect all kids. And one of those areas you hear me giving speeches on is special education. And sometimes it sounds like I'm targeting my own child. But at the end of the day, simple mistakes in special education can create huge liabilities where there are placements that will cost you $250,000 a year. And the last I heard, every kid that comes in here, we get $11,000 for, not $250,000. So it doesn't take too much, and too many of these drop the ball cases in SPED to eat up an enrollment change of, what did we bring on this year? 1.2 million in additional enrollment. And so I watched that very carefully. And what's happening at the state level is there's something called the SELPA, Special Education Local Plan Area, and that's kind of the entity that disperses funds to local districts. So they're starting to take a look at those people and find out what their work plan is, what they do, what actual support they give to the students in the districts before they disperse the money to the districts, because the money that goes to the districts goes through the pass-through of the administrative load on the SELP and its staff. So the state's taking a hard look at them making work plans. Some SELPs are very efficient, others not so much. And the downside to that is you're going to get more direct control from the state and county, and it's causing little school districts to give a more focused general plan on how they're going to address the individual students in the district. So I think a series of administrative unaccountabilities, that's not even a word, but it's boiling down to when the budget's coming on, there's not going to be a lot of place upstairs for people to be grooming dollars off the top before it gets sent to our SPED kids. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry, guys. When I was rambling on about SPED, again, Miss Owens and Miss Aislinn, is that it? Good. I was able to come to a little performance that was happening in just the classroom on any given day with the arts program. And they were, it actually made me like rap music, believe that or not. But guys, in all seriousness, do you know that every kid that's like my daughter, or just a little bit more cognitive, that we ship out of this district, we put those kids on a bus for 2.5 hours, 3 hours a day, we send them somewhere else, and this district pays whoever they're going to 40, 65,000 apiece. Y'all get 11,000 apiece. So there's a pattern to what I'm talking to. There's a classroom over there now. It's called a life skills program. It's different from something else. And this was, again, quiet. Nobody put it together, but we have a teacher that has a life skills specialty. We have an aide or two that's been dealing with people that are highly cognitively limited. We have a classroom there now, and that means nothing unless the campus is inclusive. So my daughter comes in, y'all made her a part of it, you found her a role. It seems that she was participating, it was having fun. But I can take another parent and say, what are you gaining by putting a kid on the bus? Did you win something? Did your lawyer win something because somebody didn't have an IEP on time, or the assessment, you didn't like what the district's assessor said? I actually have a product now that I can tell another parent, don't stress your kid out on the bus. Don't take resources from the other kids that are actually supporting your kid. Take a look in that room. See what's there. Is this as good as anything you'll have? We're not ready to service everybody. We're not a medical unit. We're not a behavioral unit. But they sure do good enough for me. And I'm very proud of your program. And something else that needs to happen is everybody needs to understand that the portfolios of the kids in the VAPA program, which is part of the community that got together and put the Arts Council together, and I think there were some people in here that were on the steering committee, both of y'all, and that's a product of this, and I'm glad that we're able to support the budget for that. I think it's later in the agenda, but thank you. This is where reality hits. Thank you. I never heard such a wonderful set of comments, but I need to clear up a couple of things. Mr. Sparks gave this board credit for a lot of different programs that are starting to drop into place. This board has no place for any credit in any of that. None of us, not one of us, and not anybody that's ever sat up here. The only thing we can take credit for, some of us, is that we hired this person, and I think this person come from a place where there's some progressive programs that are norms that we didn't have here because probably we didn't have the funding to have it here. And so nearly everything you heard Mr. Sparks mention and give us credit for, we deserve no credit. And when it comes time to this gentleman taking credit, he can't take much credit because he just put the idea out there, got the funding for it. These programs that Mr. Sparks referenced would be a complete failure without the staff that are out there engaging and enlisting and making these programs work on a daily basis. That has nothing to do with him or me. I hope everyone understands that. When it comes to the raises that were given, there's a collective bargaining team. There is the union, the association people. They ask for what they want. They look around. They see what the trends are. They're reasonable. We have a team. This board has absolutely nothing to do with collective bargaining, and you'll hear me chirp up if someone challenges me to be free with the money. I don't talk about collective bargaining while it's going on. It's not appropriate. But what I will say is, again, this board has absolutely nothing to do with the collective bargaining process and how it worked out. The success that Mr. Sparks speaks to and the happiness he seems to show and the observations he showed are based on the work of both teams. And I think those teams are smart enough to understand that whatever they come up with, LACO has to approve so it doesn't debilitate the district's budget for the education of children in this district, and LACO has done that. So again, don't thank the board, don't thank the superintendent, it's the negotiation teams, both the association and the district's association teams. And in my world, now that it was over, it was very smooth, the whole process. I didn't have to do anything. So don't give me credit for something I don't do. I want to talk about sports in two areas. First off, if you go back, I wish sometimes we could have Google Street View on our facilities, because if you go back 5 or 6 years, the gym at High Desert looks nothing like it did today. And that all came from people getting donations. That was not part of the district giving anybody anything. Someone was out there beating the pavement. Mary, do you know anything about this?
No.
I'm sure you probably do. You're just too shy to admit it. But people like you went out and asked people, hey, can you support our community? All those stickers on the wall at both VHS and everything, that had nothing to do with this board at all. Nothing to do with the superintendent. Now, I will tell you that I think those stickers and flags had an effect on how people see things. And I have said numerous times, our maintenance team is the shining star of this district. I went back there today, all those buildings are painted. Everything is done. There is only one thing. I'm an ops guy. I find things wrong. I looked up at the ceiling. There's one tile missing out of the ceiling. That is the only thing I could see at High Desert School. I'm sure the man lift to fix it would cost $15,000 in rental, but I mean pristine. So the sports program is building. No doubt, our sports program, sorry Tim, this is no reflection on you, but our sports program was dying at the high school 3 years ago. So whatever is happening at High Desert is moving along very quickly, and that has nothing to do with this board unless we paid the $5 each that it took to get in the game. Again, nothing to do with us, nothing to do with him. Now let's talk about something I can do something about. When I talk about the strategic plan, I want to make something very clear. When I'm at work, if there's a problem, especially with a contractor, I'm good at making confetti out of contracts if you don't do what I ask you to do, but per the terms of your contract. I'm good at it. And I don't get many Valentine's Day cards, but I'm good at it. So when you bring problems into me, I tell my people at work, when you move your problem up to my level, I'll fix it for you, but you better enjoy the way I fix it because you couldn't fix it. So when people come in here, and I have coaches that I never hear a word from, but yet they got trophies. They're the success that we're talking about at High Desert. Those kids move up and somebody has to stand up there and say, we can't get a bus. Well, I'll bring you in here. I'll help you get your bus here. So my understanding about that situation was in September, there was one issue. In October, there were 2 issues. And in November, there were 2 issues. One of those issues struck me in a bad way. Somebody took our kids up through a mountain pass or something, weaving all over the place, and you got kids throwing up when the bus gets there and feeling they were in danger. I'm sorry, if I bring you in here and rip you a new one, I'm going to do it again. It sounds to me like maybe I need to do that one more time. But if I got 6 months of somebody having buses show up, and 6 months later somebody wants to blame me for one bus not showing up, in my world, that's called effectiveness. Again, I won't get any Valentine's Day cards because of that, and I don't expect to. But when you come in here and you tell me you have a problem, and it's that serious, I start looking at things like, what are you telling me? I told you I don't impact the situation at the sites. Nobody comes to me very often and wants me to change things. They'll call me and say, hey, I have a concern. But when you come in here, I get confused. Are we insulting that person, this person? Are we telling me that they can't do the job to the point where I'm going to step in? Well, I'm going to take up the challenge. So, bus guy, maybe I should call you tomorrow. Number 1, find out where that bus was. And number 2, maybe apologize to you, but find a nicer way to tell you, you need to have this bus here, or your contract needs to be torn in half. I want to talk a little bit about the sports complex. There is a strategic plan going on. In my world, a strategic plan, can you go back to the superintendent's report, please? Right there. What these numbers are is every time you see this coming up on the agenda, those numbers go back to a plank in the existing strategic plan. So the idea was you develop a strategic plan. It's based on what the community says. We have very qualified people participate in the community. The superintendent, you heard him this evening congratulate everybody and speak to their competence. So this comes forward, And he's required to report out on anything. So I just don't want to hear a bunch of names and have people, oh yeah, they're nice people. I want to know where the rubber is hitting the road here. So the strategic plan is being updated. I'll see it when it gets up here. We'll talk about it. And within that strategic plan, my expectation from the world I live in, you should be able to take that strategic plan and apply it to just about anything in this district, whether it's facilities maintenance, sports, education, or whatever. And I'm going to be looking to find out where sports fits into this. And if this board goes through this properly, we'll be able to say, what commitment is this district making to the growth we see in sports? It's undeniable. So when we see that, then we start talking about things. We have a DSA approved plan. It's probably aged out. It costs $1 million to do engineering nowadays, but I will ask, what would the cost of this program be, and where does it fit in the budget? And I'll get Kevin up here. You know how I am with this budget discussions. I'll have them live, punch numbers in, pull numbers out. And we will have an intelligent discussion in public about what this sports complex looks like. The bleachers are terrible. The lights were put in. I think Tim rented a U-Haul from Texas and then got DSA coming in. You didn't do that. You didn't do this. You didn't give us your permit money. You didn't do that. But I want to incorporate sports or whatever it is within that plan so the community knows when the superintendent reports on something in sports, it's not just clapping hands because somebody won a trophy. Our kids win trophies. That's a given. I want to know what's happening with the facility. Mr. Sparks, you have never, ever been so complimentary of the entire team as you were tonight, but your compliments need to be back in the mirror. He was named Teacher of the Year if I heard the gossip right today. He didn't say that, but he gave us a lot of credit. If you need to tear me up for cussing out a bus driver, you go ahead and do that, but I very much appreciate the compliments you handed out to our leadership team tonight. You were very gracious, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Lester. Okay, you mentioned charter buses a couple of times. I'm taking it you don't need my assistance making those arrangements. Let's start with thanks to the steering committee, the community members that put this together. Hassan Marza was kind of the one assigned to this, and the LA representatives that worked with the community members that kind of framed this up. And I certainly appreciate the support that we've had from whoever provided the grant. This is rough for me. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm going down a different path than everybody else is. The art stuff, it's all great. It was part of school when I went there, but I went to some school-related thing the other day, and there was a piece of paper on everybody's windshield, and I thought, what is this? And it was a formal call for parent action about some subgroups, specific subgroups being excluded from proper learning environments, being whisked off to under pretenses of informal discipline and behavioral issues, being run off to segregated areas on certain parts of the campus. The old 1960s will put them people back there, that type of stuff. So I come out and find this kind of stuff on my windshield, and I'm looking at this, and now I'm hearing this, and you know, I spent a bunch of time talking about what I saw in your room the other day. I certainly didn't see that. So when you think about the cost of that, the legal cost, I mean, think about this, parents. I mean, if you're going to put recall Pfalzgraf on everybody's windshield, that's one thing. But if you're going to say that your photograph, that your school is not inclusive, that certain subgroups are being targeted and they're being excluded, and I walk into my own school and see everybody included, and it wasn't just inclusion because the teacher wanted there to be inclusion. You all like take care of her. And that's what the arts means to me. I'm not an artist, but this is an indicator of a really, really important part. This is where a community is, and the kids are building it. So I'm looking at this and going, what is this when I got this? I'm really proud of this program. I'm proud of the people that built it out of the community, the artists. I'm proud of the team that put it together. I'm really proud about it. I'm about measurables, and I'm glad that you can tie what the goals were, and then you can put this in your report back, and that they have to give us the money again. And thanks for everybody that makes this happen. Thank you. As I said in my public comments, this is where LACO says, you guys aren't giving away the farm. This is where the associations look at what our budget is, what everything is, and say, let's get something together that makes sense for the district's budget. This is, sometimes people ask for something that would collapse the budget, have a negative impact. LACO comes back, things go to impasse. This is what I was talking about, my public comment. This is the measure. It's literally been approved by the oversight agency that looks down upon us. So thank you, negotiation teams. Was there any input from anyone in the community, parents, associations, anybody? Okay, and if I recall right, we had this introduced a little bit earlier. We pushed it down the road. There was the first reading, and this is the second reading. So this is the third time that this has been discussed in a public meeting, and there's been no opposition.
That's correct.
And my understanding is that the policy is one thing, but part of that policy is the administrative regulation, or how this rolls out is looked at. I would hope that when people come into entering into agreements with their kids riding the bus, that they're aware that this is in place and possibly why.